The year is 2430, and the Earth is engulfed in a war unlike any other. Aiden Savage, a 28-year-old ISS agent, finds himself at the front lines of a fierce battle against the Caxbid, an alien race that had once manipulated human evolution for their own gain. As laser beams and plasma blasts fill the air, Aiden uses his superhuman abilities to defend against the Caxbid's advanced weaponry. With a thought, Aiden propels himself into the air, defying gravity as he soars above the battlefield. His enhanced senses allow him to anticipate the Caxbid's moves, and he uses his telekinetic powers to deflect their attacks. The ground beneath him trembles as explosions rock the earth, but Aiden remains focused on his mission. "Savage, watch your six," a voice crackles through his earpiece. Aiden spins around just in time to see a Caxbid soldier aiming a pulse rifle at him. With a flick of his wrist, Aiden sends the soldier flying backward, slamming into a nearby building. As he lands on the ground, Aiden takes a moment to catch his breath. The battle has been raging for hours, and he can feel the fatigue setting in. But he knows he can't give up, not when the fate of humanity hangs in the balance. Aiden's mind wanders to his father, the brilliant astrophysicist and space biologist who had uncovered the truth about the Caxbid's manipulations 30 years ago. Dr. Elias Savage had been a multiple Nobel Prize winner, dedicated to unlocking the secrets of the universe. But his greatest discovery had come at a terrible cost. Flashback to the year 2400. Dr. Elias Savage is hunched over his computer, his eyes wide with disbelief as he scrolls through the data on the screen. "This can't be possible," he mutters to himself. But the evidence is undeniable. The Caxbid, an alien race that had been observing Earth for millennia, had been manipulating human evolution. Dr. Savage had stumbled upon a hidden message embedded in a series of radio signals from deep space. The message, once deciphered, revealed the Caxbid's plan to create a subservient human race that could work for them on their auxiliary planet, Echo. They had been tweaking human DNA for thousands of years, guiding evolution to suit their needs. But the message also contained a warning. The Caxbid had grown impatient with their experiment and had introduced a virus to Earth designed to kill off the weak and leave only the strong. What they hadn't anticipated was the virus's side effect. It gave the surviving humans remarkable abilities, turning them into superhumans. Dr. Savage knew he had to act fast. He gathered a team of trusted colleagues and began working on a plan to counter the Caxbid's manipulations. But the Caxbid were always one step ahead. They had eyes and ears everywhere, and it wasn't long before they discovered Dr. Savage's activities. One night, as Dr. Savage worked late in his lab, a group of Caxbid assassins broke in. They were armed with advanced weaponry, far beyond anything Earth had ever seen. Dr. Savage fought bravely, but he was no match for the Caxbid's superior technology. In the end, he was fatally wounded, but not before he managed to send a final message to his son, Aiden. Back in the present, Aiden shakes himself out of his reverie. He can still hear his father's final words echoing in his mind. "Aiden, you must carry on the fight. The Caxbid will stop at nothing to destroy us. But we have the power to resist them. You have the power. Use it wisely, my son." Aiden clenches his fists, feeling the energy coursing through his veins. He had joined the ISS 6 years ago at the age of 22, determined to fulfill his father's legacy. And now, as he stands on the battlefield, facing down the Caxbid's armies, he knows that the moment of truth has arrived. "Savage, we need you at the front lines," his commander's voice barks through the earpiece. "The Caxbid are breaking through our defenses." Aiden takes a deep breath and nods, even though he knows his commander can't see him. "On my way," he says, his voice steady and determined. With the thought, Aiden launches himself into the air once more, soaring towards the front lines. He can see the Caxbid's ships hovering in the distance, their sleek black hulls glinting in the sunlight. And beyond them, he knows, lies the Caxbid homeworld, where the fate of humanity will be decided. As he flies closer, Aiden can see the chaos on the ground below. Human soldiers and Caxbid warriors are locked in fierce hand-to-hand combat, while laser beams and plasma blasts crisscross the battlefield. Aiden spots a group of human soldiers pinned down by Caxbid fire, and he swoops down to help them. "Get down!" he shouts as he lands in front of the soldiers. A plasma blast sizzles past his ear, but Aiden barely flinches. With a wave of his hand, he sends a telekinetic blast towards the Caxpid warriors, knocking them off their feet. "Thanks, Savage," one of the soldiers says, grinning up at him. "We thought we were goners for sure." Aiden nods, but he doesn't have time to chat. He can sense more Caxpid warriors approaching, their thoughts a jumble of alien languages and strange inhuman emotions. He reaches out with his mind, trying to get a sense of their intentions. And then he feels it, a sudden sharp pain in his head, like a knife being driven into his skull. Aiden staggers backward, his vision blurring. He can hear the Caxpid's thoughts more clearly now, a cacophony of hatred and anger directed towards him and all of humanity. "You will fall, human," a voice hisses in his mind. "You and your pathetic species will be wiped from the face of the universe." Aiden grits his teeth and pushes back against the psychic attack. He can feel the Caxpid's presence in his mind, trying to overwhelm him with their superior mental abilities. But Aiden is no ordinary human. He has been trained in the art of psychic warfare, and he knows how to fight back. With a roar of defiance, Aiden unleashes a blast of psychic energy, driving the Caxpid presence from his mind. The Caxpid warriors stumble backward, clutching their heads in pain. Aiden takes advantage of their momentary distraction to press the attack, using his telekinetic powers to hurl debris and rubble at the alien soldiers. But the Caxpid are quick to regroup. They return fire with their pulse rifles and plasma cannons, forcing Aiden and the human soldiers to take cover. Aiden can feel the heat of the plasma blasts sizzling past him, singeing his hair and clothes. "We can't hold them off much longer," one of the soldiers shouts, ducking behind a ruined wall. "We need reinforcements." Aiden nods grimly. He knows that the human forces are outnumbered and outgunned. The Caxpid have been preparing for this war for centuries, honing their technology and their warriors to perfection. But the humans have something the Caxpid don't: the power of evolution, the ability to adapt and change in ways the Caxpid never could. Aiden reaches out with his mind once more, this time seeking the thoughts of his fellow ISS agents. He can feel their presence on the battlefield, their minds burning with the same determination and courage that he feels in his own heart. "This is Savage," he says, his voice ringing out across the psychic network. "I need every available agent to converge on my position. We're going to take the fight to the Caxpid." A chorus of affirmatives echoes back through the network, and Aiden feels a surge of pride and hope. He knows that the battle ahead will be long and hard, but he also knows that the humans will never give up, never surrender. They will fight to the last breath, to the last drop of blood, to defend their planet and their species. As the reinforcements begin to arrive, Aiden takes a moment to look up at the sky. Somewhere up there, beyond the clouds and the stars, lies the Caxpid homeworld. And somewhere on that distant planet, he knows the Caxpid leaders are watching, waiting to see if their experiment will succeed or fail. But Aiden also knows something else, something his father had taught him long ago. The Caxpid may have created the humans, but they cannot control them. The power of evolution, the power of change and growth, belongs to humanity alone. And with that power, Aiden knows the humans will win this war. They will drive the Caxpid back to the stars, and they will claim their rightful place in the universe. The fight for survival has only just begun, but Aiden is ready. He is ready to lead the charge, to be the hero that humanity needs. With a final, defiant roar, Aiden leaps back into the fray, his powers blazing like a supernova. The battle rages on, but Aiden knows that victory is within reach, and he will not rest until it is won. The year was 2400, and Dr. Elias Savage found himself standing at the precipice of a discovery that would change the course of human history. As a renowned astrophysicist and space biologist, he had dedicated his life to unraveling the mysteries of the cosmos. But nothing could have prepared him for the revelation that now stared back at him from the screens of his laboratory. For months, Dr. Savage had been analyzing data from a series of deep space probes, searching for signs of extraterrestrial life. He had always believed that humanity was not alone in the universe, but the evidence he had uncovered pointed to something far more sinister than he had ever imagined. The data showed a pattern of genetic manipulation, stretching back thousands of years. At first, Dr. Savage had dismissed it as an anomaly, a glitch in the system. But as he dug deeper, he realized that the anomalies were not random at all. They were the work of an intelligent species, one that had been guiding human evolution for millennia. Dr. Savage leaned back in his chair, his mind reeling with the implications of his discovery. He had always known that the universe was vast and full of wonders, but this was beyond anything he had ever dreamed of. An alien species, manipulating the very fabric of human DNA for purposes that he could only guess at. As he pored over the data, Dr. Savage began to piece together the puzzle. The genetic manipulations were not random, but rather part of a carefully orchestrated plan. The aliens, whom he had come to call the Caxbid, had been tweaking human DNA for thousands of years, guiding evolution to suit their own needs. But what were those needs? Dr. Savage could only speculate, but the more he analyzed the data, the more he became convinced that the Caxbid had a specific goal in mind. They were creating a subservient human race, one that could be used as workers on their auxiliary planet, Echo. The thought sent a chill down Dr. Savage's spine. He had always believed that the purpose of science was to expand human knowledge and to better the lives of all people. But now he realized that his work had been co-opted by an alien species, one that saw humanity as nothing more than a tool to be used and discarded. Dr. Savage knew that he had to act fast. He couldn't keep this discovery to himself, not when the fate of humanity was at stake. He needed to share his findings with the scientific community, to warn them of the danger that lurked in the stars. But as he prepared to go public with his revelation, Dr. Savage couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched. He had always been a paranoid man, but now his fears seemed justified. If the Caxbid had been manipulating human evolution for thousands of years, who was to say that they weren't watching him now, monitoring his every move? Dr. Savage took a deep breath and pushed his fears aside. He had a duty to humanity, and he would not be deterred by the threats of an alien species. He gathered his data and prepared to present his findings to the world. The day of the presentation arrived, and Dr. Savage found himself standing before a packed auditorium of scientists, journalists, and government officials. He took a deep breath and began to speak, his voice trembling with emotion as he revealed the truth about the Caxbid and their manipulations of human evolution. At first, the audience was skeptical. Dr. Savage's claims seemed too fantastical to be true, like something out of a science fiction novel. But as he presented his evidence, the skepticism turned to shock and disbelief. The data was irrefutable. The Caxbid had been manipulating human DNA for thousands of years, guiding evolution to create a subservient race of workers. And now, they were preparing to harvest the fruits of their labors, to take the strongest and most adaptable humans and transport them to their auxiliary planet, Echo. As Dr. Savage spoke, he could see the fear and confusion on the faces of his colleagues. Some of them looked at him with pity, as if he had lost his mind. Others looked at him with anger, as if he had betrayed some sacred trust by revealing the truth. But Dr. Savage pressed on, his voice growing stronger with each word. He knew that he had to make them understand the gravity of the situation, the danger that humanity now faced. "This is not a hoax, nor a delusion," he said, his eyes blazing with intensity. "The Caxbid are real, and they are coming for us. We must prepare ourselves, not just for their arrival, but for the battle that will inevitably follow." The audience erupted into chaos, with scientists shouting questions and journalists clamoring for interviews. Dr. Savage tried to answer as many as he could, but he knew that time was running out. The Caxbid would not sit idly by while he revealed their secrets to the world. As he left the stage, Dr. Savage felt a sense of both triumph and dread. He had done what he set out to do, but he knew that the real battle was just beginning. The Caxbid would stop at nothing to protect their interests, and he had just painted a target on his back. In the days that followed, Dr. Savage found himself at the center of a media firestorm. His face was plastered across every news channel and newspaper, his name on the lips of every scientist and government official. Some hailed him as a hero, while others denounced him as a fraud and a madman. But Dr. Savage knew that he had to keep pushing forward. He gathered a team of trusted colleagues and began working on a plan to counter the Caxbid's manipulations. They analyzed the genetic data, looking for weaknesses in the Caxbid's design, searching for a way to break free from their control. But the Caxbid were always one step ahead. They had eyes and ears everywhere, and it wasn't long before they discovered Dr. Savage's activities. They sent their agents to infiltrate his team, to sabotage his research, and to eliminate any threats to their plans. Dr. Savage knew that he was running out of time. He had to find a way to protect humanity, to give them a fighting chance against the Caxbid. But he also knew that he was up against an enemy that had been planning this for thousands of years, an enemy that had technology and resources far beyond anything he could imagine. One night, as Dr. Savage worked late in his lab, he heard a sound that made his blood run cold. It was the sound of footsteps, coming closer and closer to his door. He knew that the Caxbid had come for him, that they would stop at nothing to silence him and his research. Dr. Savage grabbed his notes and his data, stuffing them into a backpack as he ran for the door. But he was too late. The door burst open, and a group of Caxbid assassins poured into the room, their weapons drawn and their eyes glinting with malice. Dr. Savage fought bravely, using every ounce of his strength and intellect to hold them off. But he was no match for their superior technology and training. He felt a searing pain in his chest, and he knew that he had been hit. As he lay on the floor, his life ebbing away, Dr. Savage's thoughts turned to his son, Aiden. He knew that Aiden would be the one to carry on his work, to lead humanity in the fight against the Caxbid. With his last breath, he sent a message to Aiden, urging him to take up the mantle and to never give up hope. Dr. Elias Savage died that night, but his legacy lived on. His revelation had shaken the world to its core, and his sacrifice had given humanity a chance to fight back against the Caxbid. And as Aiden Savage stepped into his father's shoes, he knew that he would not rest until the Caxbid were defeated, and humanity was safe once more. The road ahead would be long and hard, but Aiden was ready. He had his father's brilliance, his mother's courage, and the power of human evolution on his side. And he would not stop until the Caxbid were nothing more than a distant memory, a cautionary tale of the dangers of meddling with the fabric of life itself. As Aiden looked up at the stars, he felt a sense of purpose and destiny. He knew that he was meant for this, that he had been born to lead humanity in this final battle. And with his father's spirit guiding him, he knew that he could not fail. The revelation of Dr. Elias Savage had changed everything, but it was only the beginning. The real fight was still to come, and Aiden Savage would be at the forefront, leading the charge against the Caxbid and their twisted designs. The future of humanity hung in the balance, and Aiden would not rest until it was secure. The year was 2430, and the world was engulfed in chaos. The Caxbid, an alien race that had been manipulating human evolution for millennia, had finally revealed themselves, launching a full-scale invasion of Earth. The skies were filled with their ships, their weapons raining down destruction upon the planet's surface. But humanity wasn't defenseless. In the years since Dr. Elias Savage's revelation, the ISS had been training a new generation of enhanced humans, individuals with abilities far beyond those of ordinary men and women. And at the forefront of this team was Aiden Savage, the son of the man who had first uncovered the truth about the Caxbid. Aiden stood atop a ruined building, his eyes scanning the horizon for any sign of the enemy. He was tall and muscular, with short dark hair and piercing blue eyes that seemed to glow with an inner fire. He wore a sleek black combat suit, adorned with the insignia of the ISS, and carried a high-powered plasma rifle at his side. Around him, the city lay in ruins, its once proud skyscrapers reduced to rubble and ash. The streets were filled with the bodies of the dead and dying, both human and Caxbid alike. The air was thick with smoke and the stench of death, and the sounds of battle echoed in the distance. Aiden's team was spread out across the city, each member using their unique abilities to hold back the Caxbid advance. There was Kai, a young woman with the power to control the elements, who was using her abilities to create walls of fire and ice to block the enemy's path. There was Lena, a telepath who could read the minds of the Caxpid and anticipate their every move. And there was Zane, a man with superhuman strength and speed, who was engaging the enemy in hand-to-hand combat. But Aiden was the leader, the one who held the team together. He had been training for this moment his entire life. Ever since his father had first told him the truth about the Caxpid, he had honed his abilities to a razor's edge, mastering the art of telekinesis and learning to defy the very laws of gravity itself. As he surveyed the battlefield, Aiden's mind raced with strategies and tactics. He knew that the Caxpid were a formidable enemy, with technology and weapons far beyond anything that humanity had ever seen. But he also knew that they were not invincible, that they had weaknesses that could be exploited. Suddenly, a massive explosion rocked the city, sending debris and rubble flying in all directions. Aiden's head snapped around, his eyes widening as he saw a Caxpid ship descending from the sky, its weapons already firing. "Take cover!" he shouted, his voice amplified by the suit's built-in comm system. His team scattered, diving for cover behind the ruined buildings and vehicles that littered the streets. Aiden himself leaped into the air, his body defying gravity as he soared toward the Caxpid ship. He could feel the rush of air against his face, the exhilaration of flight coursing through his veins. But he also knew that he was vulnerable up here, exposed to the ship's weapons and defenses. As he drew closer, the ship's turrets swiveled to face him, their barrels glowing with deadly energy. Aiden gritted his teeth, focusing his mind on the task at hand. With a thought, he reached out with his telekinetic abilities, seizing control of the ship's weapons and tearing them from their mountings. The Caxpid inside the ship were thrown into chaos, their screens and instruments going haywire as Aiden's psychic assault tore through their systems. The ship began to list to one side, its engines sputtering and failing as it lost power. Aiden landed on the ship's hull, his boots magnetizing to the metal surface. He could hear the Caxpid inside, their alien language harsh and guttural as they shouted orders and warnings, but he paid them no heed, his mind focused on the task at hand. With a thought, he tore open the ship's hatch, revealing the Caxpid warriors inside. They were tall and slender, with pale, almost translucent skin and large, almond-shaped eyes that glowed with an eerie blue light. They wore sleek black armor, adorned with strange alien symbols, and carried weapons that pulsed with deadly energy. Aiden leaped into the ship, his plasma rifle already firing. The Caxpid warriors fell before him, their armor shattering under the onslaught of his weapons fire. But they were not defenseless, and they fought back with a ferocity that belied their slender frames. One of the warriors lunged at Aiden, his blade slicing through the air with deadly precision. Aiden dodged to the side, his reflexes enhanced by his suit's neural interface. He lashed out with a telekinetic blast, sending the warrior flying across the ship's interior. But there were more warriors, pouring out from every hatch and corridor. Aiden found himself surrounded, his rifle running low on power as he fought to hold them back. He could feel his strength waning, his body pushed to the limits of its endurance. Suddenly, a searing pain lanced through his shoulder, and he cried out in agony. One of the Caxpid warriors had managed to land a blow, his blade piercing through Aiden's armor and into the flesh beneath. Aiden stumbled back, his vision blurring as he fought to stay conscious. But he was not alone. His team had seen his plight, and they were already racing to his aid. Kai burst into the ship, her body wreathed in flames, as she unleashed a torrent of fire upon the Caxpid warriors. Lena was right behind her, her mind reaching out to seize control of the Caxpid's weapons, turning them against their own masters. And Zane was a blur of motion, his fists and feet striking with superhuman speed and strength. Together they fought their way to Aiden's side, their powers combining to create a maelstrom of destruction that swept through the Caxpid ranks. The ship shuddered and groaned under the onslaught, its hull rupturing and its systems failing. Aiden staggered to his feet, his wounded arm hanging limply at his side. He could feel the blood running down his chest, the pain a dull, throbbing ache that threatened to overwhelm him, but he pushed it aside, his mind focused on the mission at hand. "We need to get out of here," he said, his voice ragged with pain. This ship is going down, and we don't want to be on it when it does." His team nodded, their faces grim with determination. Together, they fought their way back to the ship's hatch, their powers creating a path through the Caxbid warriors that stood in their way. As they emerged into the open air, the ship behind them erupted into flames, its hull tearing apart as its reactor core went critical. The explosion was deafening, the shockwaves slamming into them like a physical blow, but that they were already moving, their bodies propelled by Aiden's telekinetic powers as they soared through the air. Below them, the city lay in ruins, the Caxbid's ships still raining down destruction upon the streets. Aiden's mind raced with possibilities, his strategic intellect already formulating plans and contingencies. He knew that this was only the beginning, that the Caxbid would not rest until they had conquered the earth and enslaved its people. But he also knew that humanity would not go down without a fight, that they would resist the Caxbid's invasion with every ounce of strength and courage they possessed. As he landed on a nearby rooftop, his team close behind him, Aiden's eyes scanned the horizon once more. He could see more Caxbid ships descending from the sky, their weapons already firing. But he could also see the ISS's own ships rising to meet them, their hulls bristling with armaments and their crews ready for battle. The fight for Earth had only just begun, but Aiden knew that they would not rest until the Caxbid were defeated. He had lost too much already, his father, his home, his very sense of self, but he would not lose this fight. He would lead his team to victory, no matter the cost. Grimacing in pain, Aiden tore a strip of cloth from his suit and wrapped it around his wounded shoulder. The bleeding had slowed, but the pain was still intense, a constant reminder of the sacrifices he had made and the battles yet to come. But he could not afford to dwell on his own pain, not now. The fate of the world rested on his shoulders, and he would not let it fall. With a final, determined nod to his team, Aiden leaped into the air once more, his body defying gravity as he soared toward the next battle. The Caxbid had underestimated humanity, had thought them weak and easily conquered, but they had not reckoned on the power of the human spirit, on the indomitable will that had carried their species through countless trials and tribulations. And they had not reckoned on Aiden Savage, the son of the man who had first uncovered their secrets and the leader of the ISS's enhanced human team. He would fight them with every ounce of strength and courage he possessed, and he would not rest until the Earth was safe once more. As he flew through the war-torn skies, Aiden's mind was already racing with plans and strategies, his intellect and his powers working in perfect harmony to defeat the Caxbid threat. The battle had only just begun, but he knew that victory was within reach, and he would not fail, not now, not ever. For the sake of his father's memory, for the sake of the world he had sworn to protect, Aiden Savage would fight on until the very end. The year was 24, and Aiden Savage stood at the threshold of a new chapter in his life. He had just turned 22, and the weight of his father's legacy hung heavy on his shoulders. Dr. Elias Savage had given his life to uncover the truth about the Caxbid, and now it fell to Aiden to take up the fight against the alien threat. Aiden had always known that he was different, that the genetic modifications wrought by the Caxbid virus had given him abilities far beyond those of ordinary humans. But it wasn't until he joined the IS that he truly began to understand the extent of his powers. The ISS training facility was a marvel of modern technology, a sprawling complex of sleek glass and steel buildings nestled in the heart of the Rocky Mountains. It was here that the next generation of enhanced humans was forged, their bodies and minds honed to a razor's edge in preparation for the battles to come. Aiden's first day at the facility was a blur of activity, a whirlwind of orientations and assessments designed to gauge his strengths and weaknesses. He was poked and prodded, scanned and tested, his every move analyzed by a team of scientists and military experts. But through it all, Aiden remained focused on his goal. He had come here to learn, to master his abilities, and become the weapon that humanity needed in its fight against the Caxbid, and he would not rest until he had achieved that goal. As the weeks turned into months, Aiden threw himself into his training with a singular focus. He spent long hours in the combat simulators, honing his reflexes and his aim until he could take down a squad of simulated Caxbid warriors with ease. He pushed his body to the limits of its endurance, running for miles in the thin mountain air and lifting weights that would have crushed an ordinary human. But it was in the realm of his psychic abilities that Aiden truly excelled. Under the guidance of his mentors, he learned to harness his telekinetic powers with a precision and control that astounded even the most experienced ISS agents. He could move objects with his mind, shielding himself and his teammates from incoming fire and hurling his enemies aside like rag dolls. As his powers grew, so too did Aiden's confidence. He had always been a quiet, introspective young man, more comfortable with books and studying than with social interaction. But now, surrounded by others who shared his abilities and his sense of purpose, he began to come out of his shell. He formed close bonds with his fellow trainees, forging friendships that would last a lifetime. There was Kai, the fiery-tempered elementalist who could conjure flames and ice with a thought. There was Lena, the gentle telepath who could read emotions like an open book. And there was Zane, the charismatic speedster who could outrun a bullet. Together, they pushed each other to new heights, challenging each other to be better, faster, stronger. They trained together, ate together, and spent long hours talking and laughing in the common room of their dormitory. But even as Aiden reveled in his newfound sense of belonging, he never forgot the reason he had come to the ISS in the first place. The Caxbid threat loomed large in his mind, a constant reminder of the battles yet to come. He spent long hours poring over the files his father had left behind, studying the Caxbid's technology and tactics. He analyzed their weaknesses, looking for any chink in their armor that could be exploited, and he worked tirelessly to improve his own abilities, pushing himself harder and harder until he was ready to face the enemy head-on. As the years passed, Aiden rose through the ranks of the ISS, his natural leadership abilities and keen strategic mind earning him the respect and admiration of his peers. He was promoted to squad leader, then to battalion commander, his responsibilities growing with each passing year. But even as he took on more and more responsibility, Aiden never lost sight of his ultimate goal. He knew that the Caxbid were out there, waiting and watching, their plans for Earth's conquest moving forward with each passing day. And he knew that he would be the one to stop them, no matter the cost. It was during a routine training exercise that Aiden first caught a glimpse of the true extent of the Caxbid threat. He and his squad were running a simulation, battling their way through a virtual cityscape overrun by enemy forces. But as they fought, Aiden began to sense a presence at the edge of his consciousness, a vast and alien intelligence that seemed to be watching their every move. At first, he tried to shake it off, convincing himself that it was just a glitch in the simulation. But as the presence grew stronger, he realized that it was something far more sinister. With a sudden, sickening lurch, the simulation dissolved around them, replaced by a swirling vortex of light and shadow. Aiden and his squad found themselves adrift in an endless void, their bodies suspended in a sea of nothingness. And then, out of the darkness, a voice spoke. It was cold and inhuman, a grating metallic rasp that seemed to pierce Aiden's very soul. "You have come far, Aiden Savage," it said, "but you cannot hope to defeat us. We are the Caxbid, and we have been watching you since the day you were born." Aiden felt a chill run down his spine, a primal fear that threatened to overwhelm him, but he pushed it aside and summoning every ounce of courage he possessed. "I know what you are," he said, his voice steady and clear, "and I know what you plan to do, but I will not let you succeed. I will fight you with every breath in my body, and I will not rest until Earth is safe." The voice laughed, a harsh, grating sound that echoed through the void. "You are brave, Aiden Savage," it said, "but bravery alone will not save you. You are nothing more than a pawn in a game that has been played out across the stars for millennia. And when the time comes, you will fall, just like all the others who have stood against us." With that, the voice fell silent, and the void began to dissolve around them. Aiden and his squad found themselves back in the simulation room, their bodies drenched in sweat and their hearts racing. But even as they struggled to catch their breath, Aiden knew that the encounter had been no mere glitch. The Caxpid were watching them, studying their every move, and they would stop at nothing to see their plans for Earth's conquest brought to fruition. In the weeks and months that followed, Aiden redoubled his efforts, pushing himself and his squad to new heights of skill and endurance. They ran simulation after simulation, battling virtual Caxpid forces in every conceivable scenario. They studied the enemy's technology and tactics, looking for any weakness that could be exploited. And through it all, Aiden never lost sight of his ultimate goal. He knew that the fate of the world rested on his shoulders, and he would not let it fall. He would lead the fight against the Caxpid, no matter the cost. As the years passed, Aiden and his squad became a legend within the ISS, a shining example of what enhanced humans could achieve. They were the best of the best, the tip of the spear in humanity's fight against the Caxpid. But even as they basked in the glow of their successes, Aiden knew that the true test was yet to come. The Caxpid were out there, waiting and watching, their plans moving forward with each passing day. And when the time came, Aiden knew that he would be ready. He had trained for this moment his entire life, honing his mind and body into a weapon of unparalleled power. He had forged unbreakable bonds with his fellow ISS agents, a found family that would stand with him to the bitter end. And he had his father's legacy to guide him, a shining beacon of hope in the darkness. Dr. Elias Savage had given his life to uncover the truth about the Caxpid, and Aiden would not let that sacrifice be in vain. He would fight the Caxpid with every ounce of strength and courage he possessed, and he would not rest until Earth was safe once more. For the sake of his father's memory, for the sake of the world he had sworn to protect, Aiden Savage would stand tall, a beacon of hope in the gathering darkness. And when the final battle came, he would be ready, a warrior forged in the fires of adversity, a champion of humanity's cause. The Caxpid would learn to fear his name and the name of all those who stood with him. For Aiden Savage was more than just a soldier, more than just an enhanced human. He was a symbol of hope, a living embodiment of the indomitable human spirit. And he would not be broken, not by the Caxpid, not by anyone. He would fight on until the very end, and he would emerge victorious. The battle raged on, a symphony of chaos and destruction that filled the skies above Earth. Aiden Savage soared through the maelstrom, his body a blur of motion as he dodged and weaved through the Caxpid's fire. His mind raced with strategies and calculations, analyzing the enemy's every move and adapting his own tactics to counter them. But even as he fought, Aiden couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. The Caxpid's attack patterns were different than anything he had seen before, more focused and deliberate than their usual chaotic assaults. It was as if they were following a plan, working towards some hidden goal that only they knew. Suddenly, a high-priority message flashed across Aiden's HUD, an urgent communication from ISS Command. With a thought, he opened the channel, his heart pounding in his chest as he prepared for the worst. "Aiden, we've intercepted a Caxpid transmission." The voice of his commanding officer crackled over the comm. "It's bad. Really bad." Aiden felt a chill run down his spine, a sense of dread that threatened to overwhelm him. "What is it?" he asked, his voice tight with tension. "It's a communication between Caxpid leaders," the officer replied. "They're discussing their plan to eradicate the human race. They're calling us a failed experiment, Aiden. They want to wipe us out and start over." Aiden's blood ran cold, a sickening sensation that twisted his gut into knots. He had always known that the Caxpid saw humanity as little more than a tool, a means to an end in their grand designs. But to hear it stated so baldly, so callously, was almost more than he could bear. "There's more," the officer continued, her voice shaking with emotion. "They're talking about the virus, Aiden, the one that gave us our powers. It was never meant to help us. It was meant to kill us." Aiden's mind reeled, struggling to process the implications of what he was hearing. The virus that had swept through the human population, granting superhuman abilities to those who survived. It had been a Caxpid creation all along, a tool of genocide, designed to wipe out the vast majority of humanity and leave only a select few alive to serve as slaves. But something had gone wrong. The virus had mutated, granting powers beyond anything the Caxbid had ever intended. It had given humanity a fighting chance, a means to resist the alien invaders and fight back against their oppressors. Aiden's mind raced with the possibilities, the potential for humanity to turn the tables on their would-be conquerors. But even as he considered the options, he knew that time was running out. The Caxbid's plan was already in motion, and if they succeeded, it would mean the end of everything he had ever known. With a thought, Aiden opened a channel to his team, his voice steady and determined as he spoke. Listen up, everyone. We've got a situation. The Caxbid are planning to wipe us out, using the virus that gave us our powers. We need to stop them, and we need to do it now. There was a moment of stunned silence, a heartbeat of disbelief and horror that seemed to stretch out into eternity. But then, one by one, Aiden's teammates began to respond, their voices filled with grim determination. "We're with you, Aiden," Kai said, her words crackling with barely contained rage. "Those bastards won't know what hit them." "I'll start scanning for any signs of the virus," Lena added, her telepathic abilities already reaching out to probe the minds of the Caxbid. "If they're planning to release it, we'll know about it. And I'll make sure they never get the chance," Zane chimed in, his body blurring with superhuman speed as he prepared to move. Aiden felt a surge of pride and gratitude, a sense of kinship and purpose that burned bright in his chest. These were his people, his found family, and together they would stand against the darkness, no matter the cost. But even as they prepared to move, a new voice cut through the chatter, a cold and inhuman rasp that sent shivers down Aiden's spine. "You cannot stop us, Aiden Savage," it said, the words dripping with malice and contempt. "You and your kind are nothing more than a mistake, an aberration that must be cleansed from the universe." Aiden's heart raced, his mind reeling with the realization of who he was speaking to. It was the same voice he had heard all those years ago during his first encounter with the Caxbid, the voice of their leader, the mastermind behind their plans for conquest and genocide. "You're wrong," Aiden said, his voice steady and clear despite the fear that gripped his heart. "We're not a mistake. We're the future, and we will fight you with every ounce of strength and courage we possess." The Caxbid leader laughed, a harsh and grating sound that echoed through the comm channel. "Courage will not save you, Aiden Savage. Your species is doomed, and there is nothing you can do to stop it." With that, the channel went dead, leaving Aiden and his team alone with the weight of their mission. They knew what they had to do, knew the stakes that hung in the balance. The fate of the human race, the fate of the entire planet, rested on their shoulders. But even as they steeled themselves for the fight to come, Aiden couldn't shake the feeling of unease that crept up his spine. The Caxbid leader's words echoed in his mind, a taunting reminder of the odds they faced. Could they really hope to stop a plan that had been set in motion centuries ago? A plan that had been crafted by the most advanced intelligence in the known universe? Aiden pushed the doubts aside and focusing instead on the task at hand. He had a job to do, a mission to complete, and he would not rest until it was done. With a thought, he brought up a map of the surrounding area, his mind already racing with possible targets and strategies. "Okay, team, here's the plan," he said, his voice steady and confident as he laid out his approach. "We'll split up into two groups. Kai and Lena, you'll take the north sector. Zane and I will take the south. We'll sweep the area for any signs of the virus, and if we find it, we'll destroy it, no matter what." The others nodded, their faces grim with determination. They knew the risks, knew the dangers that lay ahead, but they also knew that they were the only ones who could stop the Caxbid, the only ones who stood between humanity and extinction. As they prepared to move out, Aiden took a moment to look at each of his teammates in turn, his heart swelling with pride and affection. Kai, with her fiery spirit and indomitable will. Lena, with her gentle soul and unbreakable compassion. Zane, with his quick wit and unwavering loyalty. These were his people, his family, and he would gladly lay down his life for any one of them. "Let's do this," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "For Earth, for humanity, for each other. With that, they split up and moved out, each group heading towards their assigned sector with grim determination. Aiden and Zane raced through the ruined streets of the city, their bodies blurring with superhuman speed as they scanned for any signs of the Caxbid virus. But even as they searched, Aiden couldn't shake the feeling that they were running out of time. The Caxbid's plan was already in motion, and with each passing moment, the chances of stopping it grew slimmer and slimmer. Suddenly, Zane's voice crackled over the comm, urgent and strained. Aiden, I've got something. A massive energy signature, coming from the outskirts of the city. It's like nothing I've ever seen before. Aiden's heart raced, his mind already piecing together the clues. The outskirts of the city. That was where the Caxbid ships had first landed, all those years ago, where they had first released a virus that had changed everything. That's it, he said, his voice tight with tension. That's where they're going to release the new strain. We have to stop them. Without waiting for a response, Aiden turned and raced towards the energy signature, his body pushing the limits of his superhuman speed. He could feel Zane close behind him, the speedster's presence, a comforting reminder that he was not alone in this fight. As they approached the outskirts of the city, the energy signature grew stronger, a pulsing, throbbing sensation that seemed to fill the air around them. Aiden's mind raced with possibilities, trying to anticipate the Caxbid's next move. And then, as they crested a hill and looked out over the ruins of the old industrial district, he saw it. A massive Caxbid ship, its hull pulsing with eerie, otherworldly light. And there, at the base of the ship, a group of Caxbid scientists huddled around a strange, pulsing device. Aiden's heart sank, a sickening realization washing over him. They were too late. The Caxbid were already preparing to release the virus, to unleash their final solution upon the world. But even as despair threatened to overwhelm him, Aiden felt a surge of determination, a fierce, unbreakable resolve that burned bright in his chest. He would not let it end like this. He would not let the Caxbid win. With a thought, he reached out to Kai and Lena, his mind linking with theirs in a burst of telepathic communication. Guys, we found it. The Caxbid are preparing to release the virus. We need you here, now. He could feel their acknowledgement, could sense their minds racing with the same determination that filled his own. They were on their way, racing towards the industrial district, with all the speed they could muster. But even as they approached, Aiden knew that they might not make it in time. The Caxbid scientists were already beginning their final preparations, the pulsing device at the base of the ship growing brighter and brighter with each passing moment. Aiden turned to Zane, his eyes blazing with intensity. We have to stop them, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. No matter what it takes. Zane nodded, his face grim with determination. I'm with you, Aiden, to the end. Together they raced toward the Caxbid ship, their bodies blurring with superhuman speed as they closed the distance. Aiden could feel the energy signature pulsing around them, a sickening, crawling sensation that seemed to worm its way into his very soul. But he pushed the feeling aside, focusing instead on the task at hand. He had to stop the Caxbid, had to prevent them from releasing the virus. Everything else was secondary. As they approached the ship, the Caxbid scientists turned to face them, their faces twisted with hatred and contempt. They raised their weapons, preparing to fire, but Aiden was faster. With a burst of telekinetic energy, he sent them flying backwards, their bodies slamming into the hull of the ship with sickening force. Zane raced forward, his body a blur of motion, as he snatched the pulsing device from the ground. He held it aloft, his eyes wide with horror as he realized what it was. Aiden, this is it. The virus. If they release this. Aiden nodded, his face grim with determination. We won't let that happen. Destroy it, Zane. Now. Zane hesitated for a moment, his eyes flickering with uncertainty. But then, with a final, determined nod, he crushed the device in his hands, his superhuman strength reducing it to nothing more than a pile of twisted metal and shattered circuitry. And with that, it was over. The Caxbid's plan had been stopped, their final solution averted. Aiden felt a surge of relief wash over him, a sense of triumph that filled his heart with joy. But even as he savored the victory, he knew that the fight was far from over. The Caxbid would not rest, would not stop until they had achieved their goal. and Aiden and his team would be there to stop them every step of the way. For they were the ISS, the guardians of humanity, and they would not rest until the Earth was safe, until the Caxbid were nothing more than a distant memory. The Caxbid ship loomed above them, a massive, imposing structure that seemed to fill the entire sky. Aiden Savage stood at the edge of the launch pad, his eyes locked on the alien vessel, his heart pounding with a mixture of fear and determination. Beside him, his team stood ready, their faces grim with resolve. Kai, Lena, and Zane, the three people he trusted most in the world, the three people who had been with him through every step of this journey. "Are you sure about this, Aiden?" Kai asked, her voice tight with concern. "Infiltrating a Caxbid ship, it's never been done before." Aiden nodded, his jaw clenched with determination. "I know, but we don't have a choice. We need answers, and we need them now." He turned to face his team, his eyes blazing with intensity. "The Caxbid have been manipulating us for centuries, guiding our evolution, shaping our destiny. And now they want to wipe us out, to erase us from existence." He paused, his voice dropping to a whisper. "We can't let that happen. We won't let that happen." Lena stepped forward, her hand resting gently on Aiden's shoulder. "We're with you, Aiden. No matter what happens, we're with you." Zane nodded, his eyes glinting with fierce determination. "To the end." Aiden felt a surge of emotion wash over him, a sense of gratitude and love that filled his heart to bursting. These were his people, his family, and he would gladly lay down his life for any one of them. But there was no time for sentiment, no time for hesitation. The Caxbid ship was waiting, and they had a mission to complete. With a final nod to his team, Aiden stepped forward, his body tensing with anticipation. He reached out with his mind, his telekinetic powers probing the ship's defenses, searching for a way in. And there it was, a tiny gap in the ship's shields, a momentary weakness that he could exploit. With a burst of mental energy, Aiden tore the gap wide open, his powers ripping through the ship's defenses like tissue paper. Alarms blared, klaxons screaming in protest, but Aiden and his team were already moving. They raced forward, their bodies blurring with superhuman speed as they leaped into the air, propelling themselves towards the waiting ship. The Caxbid security measures were formidable, a maze of energy fields and force barriers that seemed to fill every corridor and chamber. But Aiden and his team were ready, their powers working in perfect harmony to overcome every obstacle in their path. Kai led the way, her body wreathed in flames as she melted through the force barriers with ease. Lena followed close behind, her telepathic powers probing the minds of the Caxbid crew, searching for any sign of resistance or treachery. And Zane brought up the rear, his superhuman speed and strength making short work of any Caxbid guards who dared to stand in their way. Together they fought their way deeper into the ship, their powers growing stronger and more focused with every passing moment. Aiden could feel the energy of his team flowing through him, a pulsing, throbbing sensation that filled him with strength and purpose. But even as they pressed forward, Aiden couldn't shake the feeling of unease that crept up his spine. The Caxbid were too quiet, too passive, their resistance too easily overcome. It was as if they were being led into a trap, drawn deeper and deeper into the heart of the ship. And then, as they rounded a corner, found themselves standing before a massive, ornate door, Aiden knew that his fears had been justified. The door swung open, revealing a cavernous chamber beyond, a room filled with a pulsing, eerie light. And there, at the center of the chamber, stood a figure that made Aiden's blood run cold. It was a Caxbid, but unlike any he had ever seen before. It was tall and slender, its body wrapped in robes of shimmering, iridescent fabric, and its eyes burned with a cold, otherworldly light, a gaze that seemed to pierce Aiden's very soul. "Welcome, Aiden Savage," the figure said, its voice a low, grating rasp that filled the chamber with an eerie echo. "I have been expecting you." Aiden felt his heart skip a beat, a sickening sense of dread washing over him. This was no ordinary Caxbid, no mere soldier or scientist. This was something else entirely, a being of immense power and unfathomable intelligence. "Who are you?" Aiden demanded, his voice barely above a whisper. "What do you want from us?" The figure laughed, a sound that sent shivers down Aiden's spine. "I am the Overseer, the guardian of the Caxpid's grand design. And as for what I want," it paused, its gaze boring into Aiden's eyes. "I want you to understand the true nature of your existence, Aiden Savage. I want you to know the reason behind everything that has happened to you, everything that has brought you to this moment." Aiden's mind raced, 1,000 questions burning in his thoughts. But before he could speak, the Overseer continued, its voice filled with a kind of twisted, malevolent glee. "You see, Aiden, the Caxpid have a long history of manipulating and guiding the evolution of lesser species. We have seeded countless worlds with life, watching and waiting as they grow and develop, shaping them to our will." The Overseer's gaze grew distant, as if lost in some dark, distant memory. "Some species prove useful, valuable tools in our grand design. Others prove unworthy, dangerous, a threat to the delicate balance of the universe." It fixed Aiden with a piercing stare, its eyes burning with cold, implacable hatred. "And your species, Aiden Savage, your species has proven to be the most dangerous of all." Aiden felt his blood run cold, a sickening sense of horror washing over him. The Caxpid had been manipulating humanity for centuries, guiding their evolution, shaping their destiny, and now they wanted to wipe them out, to erase them from existence. "But we stopped you," Aiden said, his voice shaking with rage. "We destroyed your virus, your plan to wipe us out." The Overseer laughed again, a sound that filled the chamber with an eerie, mocking echo. "You think that was our only plan, Aiden Savage? You think we would rely on a single solitary virus to achieve our goals?" It shook its head, its eyes glinting with malevolent amusement. "No, Aiden, the virus was merely a test, a way to gauge your species' resilience, your adaptability. And now that we have seen the results," the Overseer's voice trailed off, its gaze growing distant once more. "Now we know that we must take more drastic measures. We must eradicate your kind once and for all." Aiden felt a surge of rage wash over him, a burning, all-consuming hatred that filled his mind and soul. The Caxpid had been playing with humanity for centuries, toying with their lives and destinies like some kind of cosmic game. And now, they wanted to destroy them, to wipe them out like what was so much cosmic detritus. But he would not let that happen. He would not let the Caxpid win, not while he still drew breath. With a roar of defiance, Aiden lunged forward, his body blurring with superhuman speed as he charged towards the Overseer. He could feel his team close behind him, their powers surging and pulsing in perfect harmony with his own. But the Overseer was ready, its body shimmering and shifting as it moved to meet Aiden's attack. It raised its hand, a blast of pure, blinding energy erupting from its fingertips, slamming into Aiden's chest with the force of a runaway freight train. Aiden felt his breath leave his lungs in a rush, his body flying backwards through the air, slamming into the chamber wall with bone-crushing force. He struggled to rise, his vision blurring and fading as he fought to stay conscious. But the Overseer was relentless, its powers far beyond anything Aiden had ever encountered before. It moved with blinding speed, its body shimmering and shifting as it unleashed blast after blast of devastating energy. Kai and Lena tried to intervene, their own powers surging and pulsing as they fought to protect their fallen leader. But the Overseer was too strong, too fast, its attacks overwhelming their defenses with ease. Zane raced forward, his body a blur of motion as he tried to flank the Overseer, to catch it off guard. But the alien was ready for him, its hands snapping out with lightning speed, catching Zane by the throat and lifting him off the ground with sickening ease. And then Aiden watched in horror as the Overseer tightened its grip, Zane's body convulsing and twitching as the life was slowly squeezed out of him. He tried to rise, to summon the strength to fight back, but his body refused to obey, his limbs heavy and sluggish with pain and exhaustion. And then, just as all seemed lost, just as the Overseer's victory seemed assured, a blinding flash of light filled the chamber, a searing, incandescent burst of energy that seemed to consume everything in its path. Aiden shielded his eyes, his mind reeling with confusion and shock. What was happening? What new devilry was this? But as the light faded, as his vision slowly cleared, Aiden saw something that made his heart leap with sudden, desperate hope. There, standing before the overseer, was a figure he had never seen before, a being of pure, radiant energy that seemed to fill the chamber with its presence. Enough, the figure said, its voice a low, rumbling growl that shook the very foundations of the ship. This ends now. The overseer's eyes widened, a flicker of fear crossing its face for the first time. It stepped back, its body tensing with sudden, wary respect. You? It hissed, its voice filled with a kind of grudging awe. I did not expect to see you here. The figure ignored the overseer's words, its gaze fixed on Aiden and his fallen team. Rise, Aiden Savage, it said, its voice filled with a kind of ancient, timeless wisdom. Rise and fight. Your destiny awaits. Aiden felt a surge of strength wash over him, a sudden, inexplicable sense of power and purpose that filled his mind and soul. He rose to his feet, his body shaking off the pain and exhaustion of the overseer's attack like a dog shaking off water. His team rose with him, their own bodies infused with the same strange, otherworldly energy. They stood tall and proud, their eyes blazing with fierce, unyielding determination, and together they turned to face the overseer, ready to fight, ready to lay down their lives in defense of their people, their world, their very existence. The overseer's eyes narrowed, a flicker of uncertainty crossing its face for the first time. It knew, in that moment, that it had underestimated these humans, these strange, unpredictable creatures that refused to be ruled, refused to be controlled. But it was too late for regrets, too late for second thoughts. The battle was joined, and the fate of the universe hung in the balance. Aiden and his team surged forward, their powers blazing with a fierce, unyielding light. They met the overseer's attacks head-on, their bodies moving with impossible grace and speed, their minds working in perfect, seamless harmony. And through it all, the strange, radiant figure watched, its gaze fixed on the battle with a kind of ancient, inscrutable wisdom. It knew, as Aiden and his team did not, that this was only the beginning, that the true fight was still to come. But for now, in this moment, all that mattered was the battle, the struggle for survival, the fight to protect the ones they loved, the world they called home. And as the battle raged on, as the forces of good and evil clashed in a titanic struggle for the fate of the universe, Aiden Savage knew one thing with absolute, unshakable certainty. He would not fail. He would not falter. He would fight to the end, no matter the cost, no matter the sacrifice. For he was human, and that was what humans did. They fought, they struggled, they refused to be broken or bowed. And in the end, they would triumph against all odds, against all hope, for that was their destiny, their birthright, their indomitable will. And nothing, not even the Caxbid, could take that away from them. The battle raged on, a symphony of chaos and destruction that filled the Caxbid ship from stem to stern. Aiden Savage and his team fought with every ounce of strength and courage they possessed, their powers blazing with a fierce, unyielding light. They moved through the ship like a force of nature, their bodies a blur of motion as they battled their way past hordes of Caxbid warriors and drones. Kai's flames incinerated everything in their path, while Lena's telepathic blasts left their enemies reeling and disoriented. Zane moved with impossible speed, his fists and feet striking with the force of a thunderbolt. And at the center of it all was Aiden, his telekinetic powers tearing through the Caxbid's defenses like tissue paper. He moved with a kind of fluid, almost effortless grace, his mind and body working in perfect harmony as he unleashed wave after wave of devastating force. But even as they pressed forward, even as they fought their way deeper into the heart of the ship, Aiden couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. The Caxbid's resistance was too scattered, too uncoordinated, as if they were merely buying time, waiting for something to happen. And then, as they reached the ship's central control room, Aiden saw it. A massive, pulsing cylinder of energy, a reactor core that seemed to throb with an almost living presence. And there, standing before it, was the Caxbid leader, its eyes glinting with malevolent triumph. You're too late, Aiden Savage, the leader hissed, its voice filled with a kind of twisted, mocking glee. The reactor core is already overloading. In a matter of minutes, this ship will explode, and your precious Earth will be nothing more than a cloud of debris and dust. Aiden felt his heart skip a beat, a sickening sense of dread washing over him. The Caxpid had planned this from the beginning, had lured them onto the ship as part of some twisted, suicidal gambit, and now they were all going to die, and the Earth along with them. But even as despair threatened to overwhelm him, Aiden's mind raced with sudden, desperate inspiration. He remembered something his father had told him long ago, a weakness in the Caxpid's technology that could be exploited. The reactor core, he whispered, his voice barely audible over the roar of battle. It's vulnerable to psychic energy. If we can overload it with our powers. Kai's eyes widened, a flicker of understanding crossing her face. It'll create a feedback loop, she said, her voice tight with excitement. The reactor will implode, and the ship along with it. Lena nodded, her gaze fixed on the pulsing cylinder of energy. But we'll have to be close, she said, her voice filled with grim determination. Dangerously close. Zane grinned, his eyes blazing with a kind of reckless, almost manic energy. Then what are we waiting for? He said, his body tensing with anticipation. Let's do this. Together, they surged forward, their powers blazing with a fierce, incandescent light. They poured everything they had into the reactor core, their minds and souls merging into a single, unified force. The Caxpid leader screamed in rage and fear, its body convulsing as the psychic energy tore through its defenses. It lashed out with every weapon at its disposal, but it was too late. The reactor core already overloading with a blinding, searing burst of light. Aiden felt the explosion wash over him, a wave of pure, unbridled energy that seemed to consume everything in its path. He felt his body being flung backwards, his mind and soul torn asunder by the sheer, overwhelming force of the blast. And then, everything went black, and Aiden knew no more. When he awoke, he found himself lying on a bed of rubble and debris, his body battered and broken, but miraculously, somehow, still alive. He looked around, his vision blurry and unfocused, and saw his team lying nearby, their own bodies equally battered and bruised. But even as he struggled to his feet, even as he fought to make sense of what had happened, Aiden knew that they had won. The Caxpid ship was gone, reduced to nothing more than a cloud of ash and dust. And with it, the Caxpid leader, and the threat it had posed to the Earth and all of humanity. They had done it. They had saved the world, had given humanity a fighting chance to survive and thrive in the face of an implacable, alien foe. And now, as the dust began to settle, as the reality of their victory began to sink in, Aiden felt a sense of euphoria wash over him, a kind of giddy, almost delirious joy. But even as he basked in the glow of their triumph, even as he savored the sweet, intoxicating taste of victory, Aiden knew that their work was far from over. The Caxpid may have been defeated, but there were other threats out there, other dangers lurking in the depths of space. And so, as he and his team made their way back to Earth, as they stepped out onto the shattered, war-torn streets of their home, Aiden made a vow. He would continue the fight, would dedicate his life to protecting the Earth and all of humanity from whatever threats lay ahead. For he was Aiden Savage, son of Elias Savage, and the leader of the ISS's most elite team of enhanced humans. And he would not rest, would not falter, until the Earth was safe, and the universe itself was free from the tyranny of the Caxpid and their ilk. The weeks and months that followed were a time of rebuilding and renewal, as the people of Earth struggled to come to terms with the revelation of the Caxpid's existence. There were those who feared and mistrusted the enhanced humans, who saw them as a threat to the natural order of things. But there were others who celebrated them as heroes, who saw them as the key to humanity's survival in a universe that was far more vast and dangerous than they had ever imagined. And Aiden and his team found themselves at the center of it all, their every move watched and analyzed by a world that was hungry for answers, for hope, for a way forward. They threw themselves into the work of rebuilding, using their powers to clear rubble and debris, to construct new homes and infrastructure, They worked tirelessly, day and night, driven by a sense of purpose and responsibility that went beyond anything they had ever known. And through it all, Aiden couldn't help but think of his father, of the man who had given his life to uncover the truth about the Caxbid and to give humanity a fighting chance. He knew that his father would be proud of what they had accomplished, of the way they had taken up the mantle of his legacy and carried it forward into a new and uncertain future. But even as he worked, even as he poured his heart and soul into the task of rebuilding, Aiden couldn't shake the feeling that their fight was far from over. He knew that there were other threats out there, other dangers lurking in the shadows of the universe. And so, when the mysterious message arrived, when the unknown source hinted at a new danger lurking in the depths of space, Aiden was ready. He gathered his team, his trusted companions and friends, and together they set out to face whatever challenges lay ahead. They boarded a sleek, state-of-the-art ship, a vessel that had been designed and built by the brightest minds of the ISS. It was a ship that could take them to the farthest reaches of the universe, a ship that could withstand the rigors of deep space travel and the dangers that lurked in the void. As they set out, as they left the Earth behind and ventured out into the unknown, Aiden couldn't help but feel a sense of trepidation, a kind of gnawing, existential dread. He knew that they were heading into uncharted territory, that they were facing a threat that was unlike anything they had ever encountered before. But he also knew that they had no choice, that the fate of the Earth and all of humanity rested on their shoulders. And so, as the stars streaked by outside the ship's viewports, as the vastness of space opened up before them like a yawning, endless abyss, Aiden steeled himself for the challenges ahead. They traveled for days, then weeks, following the coordinates that had been embedded in the mysterious message. They scanned the heavens for any sign of the new threat, any hint of the danger that lurked in the depths of space. And then, finally, they found it, a massive alien structure, a construct that seemed to defy the very laws of physics and nature. It hung in space like a bloated, misshapen spider, its surface pockmarked with strange eldritch symbols that seemed to writhe and twist before their very eyes. Aiden felt a chill run down his spine, a sense of dread and foreboding that seemed to permeate every fiber of his being. He knew that this was it, that this was the threat they had been warned about, the danger that could spell the end of everything they held dear. But even as fear threatened to overwhelm him, even as the weight of responsibility settled on his shoulders like a lead weight, Aiden knew that he could not falter, could not fail. He was Aiden Savage, the son of Elias Savage, and the leader of the ISS's most elite team of enhanced humans. And he would fight, would give everything he had to protect the Earth and all of humanity from whatever horrors lay ahead. For that was his destiny, his duty, and his indomitable will. As they approached the alien structure, as they prepared to face the unknown and the unknowable, Aiden looked around at his team, at the faces of the people he had come to love and trust more than anything in the universe. And he saw in their eyes the same determination, the same fierce, unyielding resolve that burned in his own heart. Together they would stand against the darkness, would fight the good fight, no matter the cost, no matter the sacrifice. For they were the guardians of humanity, the protectors of the Earth, and the champions of all that was good and right and true in the universe. And as the alien structure loomed before them, as the final battle began, Aiden knew that they would not fail, that they would not falter, that they would emerge victorious, no matter the odds, no matter the cost. For they were human, and that was what humans did. They fought, they struggled, they persevered, and in the end, they triumphed against all odds, against all hope. And so, as the stars watched from above, as the universe itself held its breath in anticipation, Aiden Savage and his team set out to face the unknown, to confront the darkness that threatened to consume them all. And in that moment, as they stepped forward into the breach, into the very heart of the abyss, they knew that they were not alone, that they would never be alone, that the strength and courage of all of humanity was with them, now and forever. The battle was over. The alien structure nothing more than a twisted, broken heap of metal and strange eldritch energy. Aiden Savage stood atop the wreckage, his body battered and bruised, but his spirit unbroken, his resolve as strong as ever. Around him, his team gathered, their own bodies equally battered and bruised, but their eyes shining with the light of victory, with the knowledge that they had faced the darkness and emerged triumphant. And yet, even as they savored their hard-won victory, even as they basked in the glow of their achievement, Aiden knew that their fight was far from over. The universe was a vast and dangerous place, filled with threats and challenges that they could scarcely imagine. But he also knew that they would face those challenges head-on, that they would never back down, never surrender, never give up the fight for the earth and all of humanity, for that was their duty, their calling, and their indomitable will. As they made their way back to the ship, as they prepared to return to Earth and face the challenges of a new and uncertain future, Aiden couldn't help but think of his father, of the man who had set him on this path, who had given him the strength and courage to fight the good fight. And he knew that wherever his father was, he would be proud, would be watching over them, guiding them on their journey, and giving them the strength to carry on, no matter the odds, no matter the cost. For they were the guardians of humanity, the protectors of the earth, and the champions of all that was good and right and true in the universe. And they would never rest, never falter, never fail, as long as there was breath in their bodies and fire in their hearts. And so, as the ship lifted off, as they set out once more into the vastness of space, Aiden Savage looked to the stars, to the infinite possibilities that lay ahead, and he smiled, knowing that no matter what the future held, they would face it together, as a team, as a family, and as the heroes they were always meant to be.